Hey, would you believe this? There's a place on Earth where, for over 400 years straight, not a single drop of rain has fallen from the sky. That's the Atacama Desert in Chile, a region scientists recognize as the driest place on the planet. And yet, once every few years, something miraculous happens. The entire desert suddenly bursts into a giant carpet of flowers. Millions of purple, pink, and yellow blooms stretching all the way to the horizon. And this isn't just a few scraggly cacti clinging on for dear life. It's a genuinely thriving ecosystem of plants, growing, reproducing, blooming properly. Sounds absurd, right? A living organism that doesn't need what's considered the most basic condition for survival for every plant on Earth: rainwater. So, where exactly do they get their water from? How can roots absorb something the sky has never given them? The answer isn't simply they're just really good at tolerating drought. Behind it lies one of the most sophisticated survival strategies nature has ever devised. And I'd bet that once you hear it, you'll never look at the plant world the same way again. Picture this. You're stranded somewhere with no running water, no store selling bottled water, and the sky stays bone dry for years on end. What's the first thing you'd have to do? You'd have to become a master of extreme harvesting, collecting every last drop of water from any source available, no matter how small, and holding on to it tightly, wasting nothing. That's exactly what desert plants have been doing, except on a level humans could barely match. You could say they're the extreme savers of the natural world. They waste no resource whatsoever, not even the invisible ones we never think twice about, like moisture floating in the air, or the thin layer of dew that settles each morning before the sun climbs high. If humans need an entire modern water filtration system to pull off something similar, desert plants invented that technology millions of years ago, built right into their own bodies. Scientists call this remarkable ability by some fairly hard-to-swallow terms. Things like fog harvesting, or the CAM photosynthesis mechanism, short for crassulacean acid metabolism. Just hearing that probably makes you want to close the video, right? So let's forget those terms. We'll call them by something much easier to picture instead: a biological dehumidifier and night saver mode. First, the biological dehumidifier. Many desert plant species, especially those growing near coastlines like in the Atacama, have leaves and stems covered in tiny microstructures, almost like a miniature net. Whenever fog rolls in from the ocean in the early morning, this net traps countless tiny water particles, condenses them into real droplets, then lets gravity pull those droplets down along the stem to the roots below. Just like that, an invisible bank of fog becomes the very water source keeping the plant alive. Then there's night saver mode, the trick desert plants use to minimize water loss as much as possible. Normally, plants open the tiny pores on their leaves during the day to absorb the CO2 needed for photosynthesis. But that's also exactly when water evaporates the fastest, thanks to the heat. Desert plants do the complete opposite. They only open their pores at night, when temperatures drop and the air holds more moisture, drastically cutting down on water loss. But here's where things get strange. The sticking point that's kept scientists puzzling for decades. If simply saving water were enough to survive in the desert, why doesn't every desert plant manage to pull it off? Why, in the very same harsh desert, do some plants wither and die while a cactus or living stone plant growing right next to them stays lush, even blooming regularly? The issue isn't really just about saving water. It runs into a much deeper biological paradox. Photosynthesis, the very process that generates the energy a plant needs to live, requires the pores to open in order to absorb CO2. But the moment those pores open, water escapes right along with it. In other words, the plant faces what seems like an unsolvable equation. Keep the water by keeping the pores shut, but then there's no CO2 coming in for photosynthesis, and the plant slowly starves of energy. Or open the pores to photosynthesize normally, and the plant loses water fast, drying out under the desert sun. Keep the water, lose the energy. Get the energy, lose the water. This is the death trap that most ordinary plants can never escape once placed in a harsh desert environment. So, how exactly do cacti, living stones, or agave manage to break free from what seems like an unbreakable rule? The answer lies in an incredibly clever strategy that nature spent millions of years of evolution engineering. Splitting two processes that would normally happen at the same time into two completely separate points in the day. This is where the CAM mechanism, our night saver mode from earlier, works its magic. At night, when temperatures drop and humidity rises, the plant opens its pores to absorb CO2, exactly when water loss is at its lowest. But instead of using that CO2 for photosynthesis right away, the plant packages it up, converting it into an organic acid and storing it inside the cell's vacuole, not unlike stockpiling raw materials in a warehouse for later use. When daytime arrives, the harsh sun and dry desert air make opening the pores far too risky, so the plant shuts them completely, sealing off any water loss. But here's the interesting part. It can still carry on photosynthesizing normally, because all it needs to do is open the warehouse, pulling out the CO2 it stored as acid the night before, and combining it with the abundant daytime sunlight to generate the energy that keeps the whole plant alive. Put simply, desert plants have split breathing in and generating energy into two entirely separate moments of the day. Breathing in during the cool of night, then using that air to generate energy during the sunlit day, without ever needing to reopen their pores again. This is exactly the solution to what seemed like an unsolvable paradox. And that's precisely why cacti, living stones, and agave can survive, even thrive, without a single drop of rain for years on end. They don't sit around waiting for rare rainstorms like most other plants do. Instead, they manufacture life itself from the most invisible resources nature offers: nighttime dew, moisture in the air, and a survival strategy optimized down to the finest detail. And perhaps this is the greatest lesson nature has to teach us. Sometimes, survival isn't about how many resources you have in hand. It's about how cleverly you use what you already have.